Start with fire, add oil, let it simmer. From the crew at 58 Surf and Stab, this isn't just a podcast, it's a sensory experience. Fresh from the coast, full of flavor, and prepared to perfection. Well, kinda. This is 58 Surf and Turf. Let's get cooked. Welcome back to 58 Surf and Turf. Our guest today is João Macedo, big wave surfer, environmental hero, I'll call him. We're going to get into all that, but I'll just start by checking in, asking how you're doing.
Feeling great. It's really fun to come up here to Ericeira. I mean, 58 has become like, I really love it. It's like a culture hub too. So obviously there's lots of t-shirts and amazing boards on sale. We all want to grab a board and go back out, but it's so cool that this, for us in Portugal, it's really important to kind of nurture the surf culture. So
Yeah.
really stoked and honored to be here.
Yeah, if we'll just dive straight into boards. There are so many beautiful ones behind us right here in the store now. What do you find you've been riding lately? We've had some, actually, I wouldn't say we've had some small, in my head, I'm like, it's summertime, we've had some small waves. I'm kind of thinking about it. I'm like, that's actually not really true. It's just a lot of swell and wind.
Just a lot of swell and wind. And it's just kind of, that's Portugal for you, you know, like it's just always, there's always some activity in the Atlantic. It's wonderful, some rawness. But I do have Dylan Longbottoms. Like he shaped for me back when it was at the org factory, and I have the Trippy Taco always kind of with me. It's like a stubby 5.8. It's just fun and loose. I have rabbit spores. They're slightly a little bit more narrow, a little bit, you know. I mean, I don't surf as much. I did make a kind of specific choice. I left the WSL Nazaré challenge, which was kind of a focus of mine in the winters. And it kind of just kept me like surfing as much connecting in between the dots as possible. And now with my focus on the Hope Zones Foundation and kind of that environmental kind of work, there's a lot of admin and you just have to be present with that, and I'm honoring that cycle. And you know, every time I do have a moment or a dawn patrol, or I'm lucky enough that my son also surfs, so he can kind of drag me in here and there. But yeah, it's an important question. If I couldn't answer which was the last board I surfed on, that would be a really bad moment.
Well, tell us about this Hope Zones Foundation that's been, I'm not going to say stealing your time in the water, but just spreading your time out as a...
You know, I was listening here to João Valente, and he's a mentor of mine, and writing and just thinking about surfing and stuff. And he was saying, these environmental movements, they're worth what they're worth, in terms of like the why, or why you actually do it. And you get into these things about purpose. And so it really came after working for a really long time with an amazing team at the Save the Waves Coalition, and being part of a really interesting moment in time, co-founding the World Surfing Reserves movement, and just having, as the name of the organization says, hope that, surfing can be channeled and can be directed to help conservation and these bigger fights, that we get so much pleasure and joy out of the ocean that it's really natural to share that fun. And I think really it's part of the global expansion of surfing. I think if surf conservation can keep following that commercial side, which is key to pay our bills and, to keep everything moving, I think we'll always be around, I think, and it's something that more and more surfing is just something that is just so global. It doesn't need to be at the, super apex, primo wave spot. Then suddenly the wave pool phenomena suddenly fills in all these other gaps. And it's just something really positive that I think surf conservation can bring to the overall growth of surfing. But Hope Zones is a very kind of site-specific project. So we really started in Nazaré. So Nazaré is like the core start, and it really was. And we got a grant from the World Surf League, the One Ocean program, and Patagonia, and the UN Ocean Decade recognized our program. And basically we're trying to start the path of a marine protected area. So it's basically where we left off from World Surfing Reserves, and nowadays World Surfing Reserves are built as a stepping stone for a potential marine protected area, for a potential national park, for a potential regional park. And so it's that legal kind of binding of a region. And so once we get into that conversation, it is a really long one because it involves lobbying. And so the way that we got around this marathon was, and this might sound a bit off topic, but I guess what else would you expect, right, from a surfer too? We planted seaweed. So we're going to plant seaweed, and we started really getting into regenerative seaweed farming and how can we reforest in the ocean, and just really tapping into all the connections that over all these years, knowing the fishermen in the harbor, and just understanding a little bit more that to demonize the fishermen is not the way. They are guys who've lived off the ocean for generations, for centuries. And so they are hunters. They want the ocean to be clean. Otherwise, they can't survive and do their job. And so it just became something that by going deeper and deeper into what conservation can mean in a place like Nazaré, which is such an ancient and pretty aggressive fishing community, we had to find a way in that we were kind of already were. Professional surfing is inside the harbor, but we're kind of like the rich guys, right? Mercedes sponsors, the contest, Red Bull,
Porsche.
Porsche goes in there. So it's fantastic for the growth of the sport, really getting into like all the non-surfing brands are really in awe. And it's just this phenomena when if we're in the water, like we vibe off that energy. We see the crowd, we see people screaming. There's something about it that there's a certain purity that I think, yes, there is a bit of a borderline getting into a circus, of course. And people who look at it closely, I remember friends like Greg Long and, some of the guys getting a little more purist, getting a little bit worried about that circus and the towing and, just how there are moments out of context that are a little bit crazy. But when it's all said and done, it's amazing just the power of nature and the natural phenomena that this location is, and how people from all over the world have no connection to surfing are just like, oh my God, how is this possible? They go to the lighthouse and it just transformed the village. Nazaré, there's a very explicit before and after, when Garrett started his project with Nicole, and that whole, those pioneering years were amazing. My, connection was trying to paddle Nazaré, and we had some unbelievable sessions. And the first WSL contests were all paddle contests there. And it was a really amazing time, but it still is, and seeing Lucas Chumbo, what he's doing with the towing and his connection again to Dylan and those boards, it's outstanding. It's just high performance at levels that are unfathomable, the barrels and just the speed that they're generating, and the carves. It's like a dream, and you're seeing it right there live. So I think, it's kind of like a little bit off, and it's such like a special kind of section of surfing, like if you go to your beach rake or surf town, there's nothing that could kind of prepare you for what Nazaré is. But then if you get into it and if you are able to see it live and up close, it's impossible as a surfer to be indifferent, to see the action and to see what's going on there.
Totally. Yeah, I think you see it really doing its thing. It's if you've surfed your whole life, you'll have never seen anything like it.
It's unbelievable. And so to tap in from the conservation perspective and thinking of it as like surfing needs to contribute to conservation here, it makes total sense. There's events, there's this. Obviously, it's really easy to get spread super thin because, there's waste management, there's crowds on the cliffs, there's we're driving, fuel, jet skis, so obviously if you start preaching really hard or again, blaming the fishermen, and there are bottom trawlers there. This is really difficult for me to admit, we've been campaigning there for years and we don't have the tools to fight these guys yet, and there's a huge campaign. I'm an ambassador for Patagonia against bottom trawling. Bottom trawling is one of the worst possible ways of fishing possible. All the artisanal fishermen are totally against it because then they go to these areas and it's totally messed up. So they can't fish. It destroys. It's like dynamite fishing. It just, for the catch that you get, it's just blowing up everything, in the process. So, these fights are not easy to kind of get in on, and you have to really kind of pick the right angle to try to make the difference, and people that are supporting you, and measure that, and just slowly, but that's what we're taught. If we really are surfers, we progress pretty slowly, like to really get to surfing big waves, or to really get to surfing super hollow waves, or, all the technical elements that go into, qualifying, or whatever it is that our, more professional surfing dream is. We all know that that's what makes a career, and that's what makes all these increments kind of connect together. And so I really believe that the conservation path is something that has tremendous growth in the sense that it's useful, it's important, and there's a need for it. And I think as surfers, we're well positioned, and that's what I want to do in Nazaré with Hope Zones.
Interesting. So what was it like founding the World Surfing Reserves? Because I think the concept it's one of those things that's like, seems obvious until you realize nobody's done it before, right? Like,
Yeah.
like it's like it makes perfect sense, right? But then nobody had done it until you came along and said, "Hey, let's make this official."
It's as these things are, right? It's kind of that perfect storm. And so Will Henry, the founder of Save the Waves, he had made this film, and that was kind of my introduction. It was actually João Valente who introduced me to Will Henry, and he was making the film Lost Jewel of the Atlantic about this campaign in Madeira that basically coalesced all of their tools, all of their, let's say, campaigning tools. And one of them, there's an interview with Yvon Chouinard, our mentor at Patagonia and founder and all that. And he says, can you imagine what if we could have, surfing national parks? And he kind of so Will was interviewing him, and he came up with this in a conversation, the interview, and it just rung so strong. And all of the guys at Save the Waves, at the board, had been going back and forth because a lot of their work was all reactive, right? So there's this faraway location, and that's the gap they filled in with Surfrider, that they could react even if there wasn't a chapter, like a Surfrider chapter in this location. They would try to campaign, talk to the local authorities, and then there were the surfonomic studies, and there's all these tools that were being developed to say that nowadays there's already a word for it, surf ecosystems, and that there is this thing, which is surfing, that is worth protecting, that it's valuable for the local communities, and that, don't just bulldoze it,
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the way that Save the Waves would come in, but it was reactive. There's normally plans were already in place, like, harbor extensions. That's what the case of Madeira was, this break wall that was really getting into Jardim do Mar. And then there was this really interesting debate that kind of was getting also born out of this, was that if a place is crowded, it's actually more protected. So this was a really interesting kind of philosophical crux, in the sense of to protect a break, if it's so secret and it only belongs to like a really close-knit group of friends, it's in much more danger.
Yeah.
And so this was also the challenge of Jardim do Mar at the time. It was kind of a pretty, not like a secret. There was some comps and stuff, but it was one of those classic things. Oh no, now we got to talk about it, and this and the other. And so World Surfing Reserves kind of was already under this, and it was kind of like someone, I think, that had a little bit of a footing in professional surfing and had that background to connect with the local surfing communities and just say, and at the time I was surfing a lot Maverick. So even out of Portugal, I was being able to make, a name for myself in that space. And so, Malibu was the first World Surfing Reserve, and guys were just stoked and to understand that there were surfers doing this. And so I think I was really lucky, at the time, Dean Latourette was the CEO. He hired me to try to implement it. And then Josh Berry. There was just a really core group of closely knit people that said, gosh, I mean, this could really be the moment. And then Fernando Agrer with the International Surfing Association also kind of jumped on board. And we got like a really big download of just basically national governing bodies, which are all the surfing federations, nominating a lot of locations. And so it just became this thing that, wow, this can be possible,
Yeah.
And Hawaii. And then there was like one final, like really key moment that almost destroyed the whole program. But it was Fred Hemmings was really pushing for national surfing reserves in Hawaii. And then George Downing was and then I didn't really know this, but George Downing was kind of like his rival and was against him because Fred was a senator and he was a Republican, and apparently George Downing was a so suddenly this whole massive ancient 40-year-old rivalry or something like exploded within the program, because we were like, of course, we got to go in. Hawaii has to be the first World Surfing Reserve. It makes total sense. It'll be amazing for the program. But George Downing, and then I had a lot of conversations with Keone Downing, his son. And so my son is actually called Zay Keone, and in honor of Keone, because it was some really just deep conversations about like, dude, we didn't ask you to come.
Yeah.
I know it's great for your program, and this program has so much potential, but we already have a lot of things going on here from an environmental perspective. We already have a lot of work. We'll call you when you need you. And it was just so like, obviously there was much more to that, and he understood, but it was like, don't make this like a rubber stamp. You got to have the local support. That's like the absolute, and that became one of the criteria. We had the quality and consistency of the waves. We had the local, surf culture and history. We had the environmental characteristics. So these were kind of like things that we molded and built within the program based on the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, of kind of identifying what makes a place of outstanding value. Why is this place, special, or why can it be elected? And then the fourth criteria, because of all this, became local community support. And that's how we decided one, because it was just like this massive influx of support. Like everyone, Nick from Cement, there were like 50 or 60 letters of support from all the local businesses here.
Wow.
And it was just like, we need this, we want this, and this is really important for our community.
And now that we have the first in Europe, the first World Surfing Reserve in Europe, second in the world, and blah, 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 10 years, 12 years, 10, 11 years. 10 to 11 years. Now everyone's complaining because it's full of people. Yeah. It attracts a lot of people.
Yeah.
So how do you see that? How do you feel that? How do you balance that?
No, it's a really, internally, and if you ask the old ladies, so that's my gauge. That's how I measure. I'm not going to like ask a grumpy old surfer who says that he doesn't get all the waves he wants that he used to get. That's not going to be my measurement of success or whatever. But if there's an old lady that is so happy because she rents her rooms and that there's an improvement in their, lifestyle, and how Ediseta has become a more international community, that's the kind of things. Obviously, being involved in the program, I am biased for sure, because I see the potential. I saw the history. But like every tool, it's like giving a hammer to a monkey. If you don't know how to use it, you're not going to build a house. You're not going to protect your house, and the World Surfing Reserve is only as good as how its local community uses it and leverages it. And in this case, helps the municipality do its job best it can. And so what we normally sometimes say in these workshops, and it's a bit of a brutal thing, but it's taxes and death, right? These are things that we cannot avoid. And so what I mean by taxes is that we have to deal with policymakers. We have to deal with the local municipality. We have to deal with the guys that build our infrastructure, that build our sewers, build our roads. And it's a pain in the ass, because it's just like, it's a minefield, and for surfers that are, we're so connected to the ocean and nature and flow and all this stuff, suddenly it's like, oh, it's just like you get so bogged, it's like, ugh. It's kind of dense. But when you see that local communities are passionate and organized about things enough, and that it's what you asked me right from the start. It kills some of your time in the water, but if you're able to, and surfing is such a selfish sport, and that's what's so beautiful about it too. But there is this turning point, that if you can think a little bit about like long-term selfishness. Wow, wouldn't it be great that I could still surf this place in 20 or 30 years time? That, I'm not competing. Maybe I don't need to surf 7 times a day. Maybe it's not like an actual necessity, or whatever you have to do to justify a little bit of time that you have to dedicate to this. Why to put pressure on these policymakers? So that's what it really boils down to. And I have some guys that, I do feel they're in politics, and, they're worth what they're worth, but they always say like, it's, if I have a local, like passionate local community that bothers the fuck out of me, then I mean, I'm pressured to do the right thing.
Yeah.
If no one gives a shit, fuck, then what's going to happen? The last interest group, the guys who want to build because they want to make all this money, obviously, they're there every single day pestering those guys. Yes, because they're commercially orientated and they have an incentive, financial or whatever, to just bug the shit out of the politicians. So then they skew things. But if you don't care about things, and then when things kind of show up, or even with this, that there's a plot of land that's for sale. And I mean, with a lot of the guys that Save the Waves, and I've had this debate with some of the guys here. I mean, that plot, in the US way of thinking, and I was, lucky enough at least to live in the US. And I think when you live and you see, stuff from the outside, it's very different. So thank God I had that experience and meeting a lot of amazing people in the US. And so not judging the US just by what it exports. But so buying a plot of land to do nothing is something that is actually considered really advanced capitalism. Like you're using the same tools that would be done to develop stuff by being able to fundraise at a really high, you have to fundraise thousands of dollars, right? Maybe not millions at this, but even in that like stretch of land, of coastline from San Francisco to Santa Cruz. It's one of the most beautiful coastlines that, it's wonderful for everyone who's been there. You know what I'm talking about. And I remember like a dear friend of mine, Mark Massara, he was, an environmental lawyer, one of the founders of Surfrider. And he would aim at every single bluff and say, this corner, they try to build a casino. Over there, they try to build like a big hotel. And so there were so many battles that went down to keep it how it is. And now we just drive and we think that it's there miraculously. No, there were a lot of local people and obviously, yes, the proximity to Silicon Valley and all of that wealth, but they bought these giant plots of land, same thing, do nothing, or donate it to a national park or a state park or whatever. And so in Portugal, that mindset doesn't exist. It does not exist. And so it's all, no, the municipality has to do that. They have to do it. It's like, no, like there is a point that civil society can step up and just do things that fill in these gaps. And so that's why, I think that there is a lot of complaining to your question, Miguel, and I agree. And there are some, not to get the municipality off the hook. They have to keep, they have a big fundraiser for the waters here, for the waste management of the, the water quality. So there's but that's like a multi-million euro project to get a new waste management facility. So it's not something that, it's not like,
just like this.
It's not organizing a little beach cleanup that's going to solve it.
Yeah.
Like it's like a super gnarly, super serious fundraising endeavor that they have to do. And no one really cares except, obviously more beachgoers and the tourism. So they have more arguments internally, but they have to build hospitals. They have to build place for the elderly. So once you understand a little bit more their difficulties and you're able to respect that it's hard. Yes, they sometimes have these massive budgets and they can do more. And there is, like in everything, there are some shady shit going on, that sucks. But if you're not interested in it, if you're not also putting in your time to help them do a better job, then it's difficult to complain. That's what I'm getting to. Then it's like complaining for the sake of complaining. And then that, obviously, it doesn't take value from some of the arguments and the vision of improving the reserve. So there are some really serious issues that the reserve has identified, SOS, the group of locals from Coxos. They really did a lot of work, like read a lot of things, and they really identified some strategic, priorities. No more extra surf schools, limit the amount of surf schools, even getting into how coaching can be, so there can be no coaching at Coxos, just finding some interesting rules.
Is that a rule?
Yeah,
that's a rule.
I thought maybe it's an unspoken rule, but that's
that's a rule.
No.
Yeah,
they send it to all the schools, and you cannot do any There's been some sometimes like people on the national team, the Portuguese national team, and they go and they have some practice with kids.
Yeah.
And so some pros are filming. Is that and they have with one coach, but it's still like it kind of keeps things like in check, so that you can't overrun the spirit of that bay.
Wow.
And I think that's really, I think that's really cool, that it's not just overrun, and there are guys literally checking in on that a lot.
Wow.
And,
They put like a surf cam clause in there too. Just be like, you never can put a surf cam here.
Never. It's off bounds. No contests. Never.
There's no content.
No
And
contests.
coaches.
And
And
no
coaches. But
coaches.
then at Ribeira, you have like thousands
blow
of
up, yeah.
people.
And still
And
trying to control
infrastructure
it.
has to-
And infrastructure.
Has to
And we have a dear friend, you know, that
Raised.
with his camp, Tiago, and it was just, and they had to blow that whole thing up. And it's a really, it's like a loss of youth. You know, it's kind of like a coming of age kind of almost story of Edie's side. And I think that's difficult because some things are just left behind and they suck. You know, there was a really cool grassroots vibe and that it blew up. There's a Challenger series, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of people visiting year round and, you know, but I still think, you know, there's still some pockets of peace and I think it's a very passionate local community. And I think that's the thing. Crowds help conservation. So it is up to surfers to leverage that and channel it into the right direction. So commerce is super important because that, again, you know, keeps things moving, but it can't only be that, you know, and I think that's where conservation kind of fills in the gap and it doesn't get too like voodoo spiritual, which surfing is, and it's wonderful, but that you have your feet on the ground and you're doing things that have, you know, measurable impact and you can get into these more, you know, activist conversations and the WSR can really have still a long range positive impact and it can still be used. You know, the threat of losing this recognition is a big threat. It's a massive embarrassment for the municipality. And it's thrown around, you know, there's a lot of internal meetings. And if the municipality doesn't kind of keep up with certain things, that threat is very active. But it's a bit like a nuclear bomb kind of thing. And if I feel sometimes, you know, it's like, it's a pity that sometimes the local community isn't stepping up and there isn't like a nonprofit that could be very well organized and that could really leverage a lot of what's already going on here and have a little bit more of a professional outcome and fundraise in a more aggressive way, but because that channels into the overall conservation of the WSR and really have this massive potential to buy this plot of land, which is it's basically connects Cochos to Ribeira. So it's
That's
like
for sale?
Well, a big swath of it.
Oh, wow.
So, hey, whoever's out there internationally, yeah, help us buy this and don't fuck it up.
the motto is sharing is caring. That's totally the motto. Sharing is caring. That's the idea, the main idea for this.
Yeah, for this kind of campaign. I mean, obviously that's the tricky thing from an investor perspective. So obviously you have to be very well with yourself at all points. You can't buy it to build a camp. You know, then we're, you know, then it's because then someone else is going to try to do it, you know, and encroach a little bit closer. So that can't be the one thing is to put little benches or something. So it's not an easy place because you're having to be able to connect with people who have been very successful in their professional lives. And how do you have conversations with, you know, these individuals in a way that they feel respected, right? That just because they're rich, they're not going to be pimped, you know, or they're just throwing money at something. I mean, they've been trained since they're like teenagers and kids not to waste money badly. That's what made them successful, right?
Sure.
And then so they're not going to throw money at something that's, you know, just has very little opportunity of success. And so, but here, this is like a huge opportunity of success, of an impact of like, you know, if it's that family name thing. I mean, all these things that we learn kind of, it's the 101 in the US, you know, like putting the benches with the family name, you know, it's the classic fundraiser thing that here, I mean, it's much easier to sell, you know, in a good way, but you have to have a lot of things in place to then put the resources where they're supposed to go.
Yeah. So what brought you to the US? At least I know you were born there.
Yeah. How did I get back?
Love.
Brought you to
Love. Yes, it is true.
Love is true.
Love is strong. Love is
Love
strong.
for the game of tennis, I understand.
Yeah. So, gosh, I mean, we were dating and then we got married in Big Sur. And so at the time, my girlfriend, Joana Lenagina, she was an amazing tennis player, and she got a scholarship to play tennis at the University of San Francisco. And so it was just a really amazing thing and an opportunity for us to be together away from the mainland and here. And I just finished publishing a surf book that I got published. It was like the first Portuguese surf book. So I was really proud of that. And it was a big labor of love that also to get that through. And the kids, like Nick, was growing older. You know, they kind of needed different stimulus, and my surf school was kind of plateauing a little bit. And so I just thought, gosh, I can go to the US. I'm lucky enough because I have dual citizenship, and just go, experience it. And I can be with Joana, and we can, just.
But you also had the goal to go to Surf Mavericks.
I knew, obviously, I knew about Mavericks, but I remember Zé Seabra, Thiago's coach and just an overall mentor and idol of ours in the big wave Portuguese surfing scene. And I was living there already, maybe my first 6 months. I didn't have any guns. Portugal, like a big wave board for Cochos was like a 7-footer, maybe a 7.2, so no clue really. And then Zé is like, man, do you know, like, are you aware, like, what's going on? Are you aware, like, all of the history of this place that you're really close? And I had an amazing session there, and a friend of mine, because he was in the contest, Danilo Couto, I paddled out on a 6.6.
You paddled to Mavericks?
I paddled out on a 6.6. And I was just hanging out there, bobbing around in the channel, asking maybe someone would lend me a board. And so first time round, it didn't work. No one lent me a board. I caught this inside and just kind of like, then went out. But it was amazing just to see the wave up close. And it was like, wow, what an amazing place. And then I went out after the contest, and Danilo, because I knew he was Portuguese, I was like, man, please lend me the board. Like, this is my second time paddling out. I was already working at the Maverick Surf Contest. So they kind of gave me a break because before the breakdown, there's thousands of people, and it's a perfect time to go surf it because no one's around. And so a lot of the guys were still, and I caught like 2 or 3 waves. And so I think I don't remember, like over the phone, I told Zé was coming to visit me, and he was on this like, 40, he was like turning 40, and he was on this like mission. He's like full guru, right? So he was like, no, I'm going to go find myself and surf all the biggest waves around the world and Mavericks. And so he stayed with us. And he's like, João, what the fuck? You don't have a board? What's wrong with you? Shit, you surfed it. You know how to surf. Like, you got the skills. What's wrong with you? I mean, come on, step it up. Like, quit. What are you thinking? Kind of thing. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, that's true. Gosh, that makes total sense. It's a really frightening place. So I was like, I checked the box, did it. I was more like thinking about, okay, I got to work. I wasn't thinking, professional surfing in any way. And so I was just really proud that, being Portuguese and surfing there and catching some waves and meeting all the crew and just seeing this really tight knit group of people that was really charging it. And gosh, seeing the inception of the vest. I saw Shane Dorian's, wipeout, Shano's wipeout there, like that one that really kind of catalyzed him really going back to the Big Island and really putting in his time and working with Billabong to come up with the V2 or V1 or what the name of it was and creating the inflatable vest. It was horrifying. It was one of the most horrifying things.
That was the morning after the contest?
The morning after.
He just hung over and just...
Yeah. No, he was super sharp, but
really
charging beyond belief. We're talking about like 60, 70 foot. it was surreal how big it was.
Were guys at least wearing like impact vests then? Or was it just...
like little like wakeboarding vests? Like nothing. It was so, and he was like doing the full Shano show, right? Turning underneath the ledge of like for me, it looked like an 80-footer, 75. I don't know. It would have been maybe the one that he fell on. It looked like a world record wave. Sean Dollar got the world record the day before in between the semis and the final. And so that's how big it was. That it was massive. And he just turned around. And I think, he had surfed like 3 times, before the contest, semis, after, I think it was just exhaustion, and he did like side slipped, and then you know, when you kind of see someone like fall, but maybe could have made it if he had maybe tried to stick it. I mean, like, because it's Shane Dorian, right? But but it was just like, fuck, he fell. And then, but he fell like 3/4 down the face. So maximum speed. He didn't penetrate. And then you could tell he went over the falls. Then I remember like because I saw him taking off. And so all of this is happening. And then I see him tombstoning and I see like the second wave coming. And I was like, no, mate, because you kind of stop seeing it. And sometimes you pop up, you have one breath, and that's like the breath of God for sure. And and that's enough to, you know, if you're trained and all that, of course, you're out of trouble, right? But he didn't, you know. So that one was like, he got the second wave, and he just popped up after, and he was like, fuck, this is not cool. We got to do something about this because I can't put everything at risk. Like he was feeling, I mean, he was charging the guy. He got barreled in the morning. I mean, so this was like groundbreaking stuff that was going down. And so, I mean, to be part of that group at Mavericks, I was just stoked. So with Zaya telling me that, and then suddenly, but I mean, obviously it's impossible not to be aware of Mavericks, but it's such an intense place that it took a while to think to myself, it's worth going out there consistent, because the fear, I mean, it's impossible to ignore. I mean, it rattles you from inside out. Like every single cell in your body is like shaking. I mean, it's not easy. And that's why I think crack is a performance enhancing drug. I mean, for sure, because it makes you feel invincible. I mean, what better drug to go to a place like that? So, I mean, so if you're not on that stuff, I mean, it really shakes you. And but that's what I think guys like Shane Dorian were able to think about that and develop, and that's where safety came. And it was a really important time of towing and paddling. And I think to this day, it helped set the stage for this still to kind of, I think the World Surf League is still figuring out this union between towing and paddle surfing. I think Jaws kind of solved it. It's always paddling. Nazaré is always towing. But the champion should be a hybrid. You should be, you know, this thing that just like I don't think there should be like a wave pool champion. You can win a contest at a wave pool, but it's not worth giving so much credit to a wave pool champion. If you're the champion of a circuit, if you're a big wave champion, you have to know how to tow, you have to know how to paddle surf. So if you just paddle surf and you ignore towing, then you're useless for water safety. So you're not part of a safety team. You don't know what to do. You're just kind of catching your own big wave and, you know, searching for your thing. But within the big wave surfing environment, you're useless. So that's not cool either. So you have to know how to tow. You have to know how to drive a ski. You have to put in time to learn how to do that. So towing makes sense. It's stupid. Big wave surfing would not have reached its levels if there wasn't towing, if there wasn't jet skis. And especially you really start understanding this when like surf explorations, and I was really lucky to do some surf exploration missions in the Azores, and then we're using all like boat infrastructures, like again the harbors, and then I mean no way you can get to an outer reef consistently and surf waves, you know, on a daily basis and try to like understand the waves better if you're paddling from shore, going through the gnarliest shore break you could ever imagine. You might do it once, catch one wave, you're swept in. I mean, you're not even putting up a fight, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, anyone, you know, who's put some time into big waves knows that jet skis, you can't preach about that, jet skis, you know, this and the other. So I think that marriage between towing and paddling and the youth movement that has to happen. So if you're a young up and coming big wave surfer, you have to paddle. Obviously, you have to put in your time on the guns. You have to like be able to, you know, get some lickings, you know, really get caught inside. You have to prove your mettle, you know, you have to like be able to evolve, and you can't just jump start it and start towing right away, for sure. I think everyone internally, you know, even at Jaws, there was a post just before this last giant swell. Albie was like, I don't want to hear about guys who have never paddled here trying to come in and start towing over us. Like, we want respect. We want time. We'll be done by like 11 a.m. and you can surf all the rest of the day. Don't come farting around here with the skis and towing if you don't want to be part of the paddling. And that was like a really clear line that I think should continue to be reinforced. And you know, in Nazaré, peak 3 is normally at least kind of reserved for paddling. If guys want to charge and do paddling, normally what you need to do is you have to have a buddy that is helping you with water safety so that you're not putting the whole lineup at risk.
Yeah.
And so there are these, you know, rules and mechanisms that come into play. But I think the World Surf League, obviously, because it is our guiding institution, like it or not. Yes, it is a big organization, but it has helped professional surfing from the very start. And, you know, it helps our careers. So I think this big wave champion being, you know, some kind of hybrid between the points that you get at Nazaré and the points that you get at Jaws. And then there's like, I don't know, there's so many creative guys with, you know, that they can come up with some competitive format that solves a little bit, you know, the top 8 are normally, you know, in both, and that there has to be a marriage between them that is really important for the growth and continual growth of big wave surfing. I think it's a super global phenomenon. It's a pity Chile, you know, and when Gary Linden was ahead of the tour, Pico Alto, amazing big waves. They're like world-class big waves. You know, Punta de Lobos is a World Surfing Reserve, is also this iconic big wave. Oregon, you know, Puerto Escondido. I mean, it goes on and on. It's a huge, and it's a super show. I mean, to see guys getting barreled on big waves, it's beautiful. It's something super cool. And I think that it is another career opportunity, just like being an environmentalist, you know. Here in Iriceto, we have like Miguel Blanco, you know, so he's like a young up and coming, and he's really put in his time, and it's something that, you know, is respected by brands. And so I think all of this is part of this really wide spectrum of what professional surfing can be, and big wave surfing for sure is part of that, and it contributes to the overall growth. And I think that's something that, yeah, it has to be figured out so that competitively we can keep not creating a divide. So it doesn't make sense for us in the community, in the big wave community, that there is a divide between towing and paddling. Yes, of course, there's some moments of rivalry and this and the other, but ultimately we all know that it goes hand in hand.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Hearing you talk about the fear that you experienced at Mavericks before was really interesting. And Mavs and Nazaré are different for a ton of reasons. One that comes to mind immediately for me is that, I mean, I guess you could surf like Mavericks needs a lot of swell to even start existing. Like, unless it's pretty big, it's not even going to break. And I know you could surf it like kind of baby Mavs Day where it's kind of soft and not really hitting the ledge and all that, but for it to do its thing, the entry is quite high. Whereas at Nazaré, I mean, when that wave's small, I think it's one of the funnest waves in the world. It's like,
it does that reform. It's kind of
wedge factory, psycho zone in there. But would you say that the way that you relate to that wave in terms of like dealing with fear is on par with Mavericks, the same, different?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of paddling is that you really, I mean, to catch a wave, you have to position yourself aggressively. And at Mavericks, it's the same thing. Yes, it's a perfect right. There is the crazy left, but you can get caught inside. Obviously, the probability is smaller than getting caught inside in Nazaré, for sure. But that fear, and when a big set comes, you know, how far in are you able to hold your line, and, you know, line in terms of like paddling out and avoiding getting cleaned up, or, you know, all of that is the same mental kind of like, you know, fight that you have to go through. And it's just, so I think the fear factor, I mean, Mavericks, I mean, I feel sometimes it's like, because Nazaré has like these smaller days and it's sunny, and so it has like almost like a lighter mood, while Mavericks seems always dark, you know. But Nazaré, because it gets so big, it gets really dark and violent, and also, so I mean, it's just, and Jaws, yes, it's sunny and it's Hawaii and it's gorgeous blue, but it's super scary, the way that the waves, how fast the waves move, and just how like in tune you have to be, and just how much you have to want it to catch a wave. You really have to want it. And for that, your positioning has to be super aggressive, and your perception of what's possible to make on a drop. I mean, Mavericks, that ledge is just surreal. I mean, it's so technical. The drop is just like really, really heavy. And I remember on our backhand, like what was being explored is like, how can you pig dog on a 9.6 or a 10.2, which is like shit. I mean, it doesn't make, I mean, we were like trying to visualize, like, I even remember like seeing Porcella did a crazy one. His back foot slipped off and he somehow made it. But that was the thing. And then he got that XXL one at Jaws. And so, I mean, but that line and Tom Lowe was, you know, these are all like super frontier lines because you can't take off deep enough. And if you're able to like really side slip, and that's what was being explored, is to really knife that takeoff. And on your backhand, it's brutal. And it's such a steep, big wave that you're committing to go sideways at the very top of a pinnacle of a building. I mean, it's just, everything is like telling you don't do it.
It's all against you.
It's all against you.
But you were a lot more a paddle guy, right?
Yeah.
You learned, and you went along with towing. You learned how
I learned
to tow.
towing way later.
Yeah.
Way later. And
And
that's
you were former top 5 in the world.
Yeah.
When there was
the world tour.
the world tour
was like
paddling
united.
contest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now that's the thing. It's like there is a big wave champion, you know, and I think obviously if you win Jaws, you are a big wave champion. If you win Nazaré, you are a big, you know, but that there was a little, that circuit. Yes, it wasn't like 12 stops or anything like that. It was like 5 and then some didn't happen. And so yes, it was difficult, but that was like, for me, it was like an amazing accomplishment personally, because we were going to Pico Alto, we were chasing these swells there, and then to make it into finals and you know, be part of that. But paddling, I think that was it. It was a more understandable format. So that was like the inception. And I think Nazaré was a pity that, you know, in some way the paddling was just so radical and that it just became, but it was such a hazard. And that's the thing, like when you put a professional contest on, I mean, like the risk, you have to measure the risk. And so if it starts becoming over 50-50, I mean, if guys, you know, that injury in the year that one of the first years that I made the final, like Damien Hobgood, I mean, he almost passed out. Getting out, it wasn't even on a wave because the rescues are so gnarly to get them out the back. And I remember I had a really severe injury. I mean, I'm so blessed. I wasn't knocked out underwater. I mean, you start really cranking up the risk like tremendously. And obviously that's what all of us, I mean, we're going Richter, you know, we're not going to think that's what, you know, is expected of us. And that's what we're going to do. You know, obviously, you know, you spend your whole year training. It's so, and sometimes you risk too much because yes, you're not supposed to do that. And so this is all going to be part of it. And so I understand why organizers kind of peeled back and started, but you could still do like 20, 25 foot days. It just takes more work. And I think the towing movement, it did make sense that there should be a tow contest. So all of that, you know, again, that's why I felt grateful. Ultimately, it was maybe a thing because the World Surf League got into towing. Yes, I did kind of follow that, you know, and I did, but I'm really grateful because I learned I was really that I was that guy that was just thinking about himself paddling, and I was trying to get the world record paddling and doing all these things. And it was just, I had my own safety and I was in my little bubble. And so I wasn't driving well enough. And so I don't think that's like, there's a piece that's missing. If you really are dedicated to big wave surfing, if you don't know how to drive properly and you don't know how to manage a jet ski, then, you know, there's a piece that's missing. And when you start like venturing into new spots, it makes total sense to start by towing. As you progress and your relationship with the spot evolves, then you can start getting into paddling, and then you can, you know, and go back and forth with that. And I think Jaws is amazing how it's able to manage that. And you know, but it needs pros like Albie and you know, all of the guys that dedicated themselves to the wave to kind of put that line, you know. And I think that's what's needed is that the professional surfing world also leads in a way that doesn't let towing overcome. And I think Nazaré is needing this, that more paddlers go there and keep considering it a paddling wave. And that was the inception of the World Surf League. And so I think there's lots of room to grow there.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a wave that sticks out to you as the wave of your life?
Yeah, you know, like in the Azores, like Zay tipped me on this amazing wave there, like this left-hand barrel. And that one, just because it was so isolated, it was just us surfing it. And it was just such a massive barrel. That was a really special one. And there was a drop in the Nazaré comp that was like the first drop of the morning, and so that one really hangs out. I would always be like more like top 3 or something. I can't quite isolate just one. But and there was a barrel at Nazaré too that I pulled in and made it out. And some drops at Mavs. There was one special one that made all the highlights for the Big Wave Awards, and that was a really personal moment that I felt kind of like just more part of the community and kind of had my little breakthrough. And so it was a backside drop. I didn't pig dog or anything, but from that moment onwards, that was the feeling, and the wave spat and it made all the highlight reels. And so that was a really fun one.
Nice. That's a good mix.
Yeah.
Switching gears a bit, you have a son that's actually about to roll through here that is now obsessed with surfing.
He's late.
Maybe the waves are fun today.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he's got an excuse. What's it like? I have friends who surf really well, have surfed their whole life, have kids, and their kids just don't really like to surf.
Speaking of the devil.
Yes. What's it like, or what was your experience, at least, like just being a father and actually raising a kid who fell in love with surfing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an ongoing thing. It's like that's parenthood, right? It's this endless journey, right, that we're on. I mean, I feel really blessed. There was, I think I was kind of lucky in the sense that when Zay's mom, she's American. So after I split with Joanna, I ended up a few years later meeting Shelly, Zay's mom, and Zay was born, and then a year after we split, and so that. And I understood that my roots here in Portugal became really important. So it was just something that I really understood, that I had to be that gravitational force for him to come more to Portugal. And so the first couple of years when he was young, I was going back and forth a lot, and it was super taxing at the time. It was like it was a pretty tricky time, but at the same time I was able to just stay enough in contact with him that he recognized me and he was stoked. And so, but it was borderline. So I think in his mind, surfing was something that bonded us. So I feel really lucky with that, because something that we could do together. And I think it was something that he knew that, at this age, the kids kind of want to be with dad in that sense. And so it was something that he was like stoked. Yeah, dad loves this. So I love it too. And so I was able to kind of ride that a little bit. And then the truth of the matter is that educating kids and, making them do their homework, do the dishes, shit like that, it's super tough. And suddenly it's not that fun, and you're really the bad guy, and they hate you, and you suck, and everything is something like, oh my God, fuck, I thought you always loved me no matter what. And no, and there's an imbalance, because as parents, we just have this endless fountain for the kids, and the kids are kind of like, hey, I got this, I don't need you, and and really quickly it gets into that, and there's clashes, and if you ask too much. And so I mean, I think it's like it's a duty, and I think surfing has this, maybe because I was able to run a school and I had a lot of experience seeing parents over push them in the teenage years, but also if you don't push and if you don't incentivize, then there's a gap. And I remember talking to Rusty Miller's daughters, like they were really good friends and brought up in Byron Bay, this idyllic place. But Rusty was really, because he probably saw all of these crazy Australian, coaching dads and all that. And so he was like, no, if you want to surf, you surf. You don't want to surf, you don't surf. Didn't really help them with technique. And so now, obviously, I mean, it's not like a traumatic experience by any means, but they're like, shit, I could probably surf better. If I did have a little bit of like just, and maybe I could surf some crappy conditions and not mind with it. That mindset that we were talking a little bit before we started, of like, when you're at a surf contest, you surf all day and you learn to make something out of nothing. And I think that mindset is really cool. And that if it's well nurtured, and that if you learn, then pros are the most stoked guys ever because they stay all day in the water and they surf anything. It's like howling onshore. They're the ones in the water, you know, started practicing airs, you know, whatever. And you just make do and you adapt. You don't start complaining and whining about oh, it's not offshore. Like, so what, dude? You're not in a traffic jam. You're at the freaking beach. Like,
Yeah.
So I would be like zero tolerance to that, you know, like shut up, like just go out there and do 3 waves and get it done with, you know, surf for an hour. And then everyone starts like finding that little, you know, then suddenly you find a little pocket and you do a little Rio or whatever. You're kind of like, you know, learning and suddenly it's actually competitive surfing actually can be a really good channel for your passion for the ocean. And so, but you have to be constantly checking in. And I think that's the challenge, is that it's not like a one directional thing. You have to really check in and say, hey, this is your journey. You know, you're like, I'm really happy that you love surfing. So now that he's older, I'm always kind of telling him that I'm super proud. It doesn't matter if you win or not, because he's like, oh, I disappointed you. And he doesn't, you know, he feels like really, gosh, I suck. And he goes, you know, he gets into these ruts. And it's like, you know, not at all. It doesn't matter. Like, you're progressing. No one cares about, you know, this stuff. No one cares about who wins the junior contest. You're making the finals. That's super fine. Like, and just like kind of, channeling surfing into helping be a good human, you know, I think, and I was, you know, I end up being, you know, I've been mentioning Greg Long over this interview and stuff because I really, you know, look up to him and really respect his path. And I saw how Steve, his dad, was very, you know, present in his career. And I was asking Greg, gosh, you know, Zay's getting older. What do you think I should do? And he was like, man, you know, one of the coolest things I ever did, because Steve would incentivize Greg to compete. He was like an NSSA champ. And so he had a lot of background in, you know, like normal amateur surfing and stuff like that. And he would say, we'd just go on surf trips. So if I started getting burnt out with San Clemente and the whole scene and all that, we'd just go camping to Baja and it would just rekindle my love for surfing and just understand why, you know, why we're so connected. And because, I mean, the truth is, obviously professional surfing burns you out a little bit. It's impossible, you know. And no matter how blessed we are, if you're in it, it's difficult. You have to work hard to feel blessed, you know, like, and that's something that I've also in my own inner workings and in, you know, working with our, you know, egos and what we need to do, like feeling gratitude is not something that you do one day or you did last year and you still feel it today. You have to like think about it consciously almost every day. And so, yes, you know, it's obviously in fashion to meditate and do all this stuff, but what are the thoughts that lead you into your meditation or whatever you want to do? Like, I think gratitude really is something that you have to practice daily. It doesn't like naturally occur. It's something that, and in our day and age, I mean, shit, for us living in Portugal, but if you're living in a place that's at peace and it's not weaponized and you're not being bombed, I mean, holy shit, there's so many things that you can really easily, no matter how shitty the day was with your job, or, I mean, there's so many things that you can tap into to just let go. But our mind is an amazing machine. I mean, it really is. And it's fast and it's, you know, aggressive. And so, I mean, you got to channel it because it can go a wire. And I mean, suicide's not a joke. And I mean, I've had a lot of friends or people I know closely, you know, and I've kind of like suddenly, and you're like, how could have this happened? You know, like, and so it's real. It's not like a joke and you know, being all, you know, happy all the time is not like, it can't be fake, you know? And so that it's not fake, you have to work on yourself on your own to be able to then, you know, work and have these moments that surfing can really replenish you. And so these places that are busy, and if you're a pro and you're always surrounded by people, you don't have those moments. So you have to consciously search for them and create spaces so that you can rekindle your passion for surfing and catching a wave and the simplicity of it and just, yeah. But at a certain level, if you're an experienced surfer, you've been surfing for, you know, 20 plus years, it's not going to just fall on your lap. You got to like think a little bit about it, put in some effort, and not just end up at Bali and Uluwatu and expect, why wasn't this like it was back in the 70s?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Come on, how do you do that yourself? Because come on, you are part of the first generation of your Saka's generation. You are Rubens and the rest of the first Portuguese generation that really got into professional surfing or competitive surfing as a junior. The so-called lightning bolts, if you are part of the lightning bolt generation. You opened a school. You wrote a book about surfing. You created
old.
the no. You're younger than me. Come on. You're younger than me. You did all this stuff with the World Surfing Reserves, the environmental stuff. You even mentored Nick von Rupp, among others.
No, he's called me back to his team, Mountains of the Sea, and all this work.
Exactly.
It's really wonderful.
And
so cool.
you had that project in the Azores. Come on, how do you do all this?
Well, breath. That's. I'll be honest. I mean, it sounds kind of cheesy and all that, but that's the truth. Like throughout my whole years, like I think my longevity in my career really is because I did a lot of things. So maybe there was a moment there at Nazaré that maybe I should have like just stayed with my school and gone and just focused exclusively maybe on a world record campaign or, trying to win the Nazaré challenge. And, it was like some really close calls. And so, but that's what I felt. That's what I wanted to do. And sometimes that's just how you are, who you are, and how you're built. And so, I did college, so all of these things kind of like were passions and called me. And that's what allows me to be here today and be working so hard at Hope Zones, because I was very free and kind of like, it is a little bit Jerry Lopez, surf is where you find it. And so I think when you kind of like able to really understand that, then you're able to miss some sessions. Cause I mean, it's heartbreaking if you're like, always like that. And yes, of course there's some sessions in Cloudbreak that I didn't make it, or obviously that's what we all also think about, the fish that got away, right? But then it's easy to get over it. And that's why I think, again, breath and working your breath, because it's such a simple thing. So it's something that you have to do. There's a lot of like these sayings, like at a certain level, you have to do things that take no talent. You don't need talent to breathe. But you need some form of discipline to do it. And if you don't tap into that, it's impossible to not be dragged here and not let your impulses just completely, help you or just take you wherever, and we're in a really free spirit. I mean, what we do as surfers is super free. So, we look for experiences and we're searching for new sensations, and all of this is like real. And so, it's all around us. So many, which other sport has like, almost like, the inception of surf, there were raves after the GTs, raves. We're talking about in Figueira da Foz, where our friends organized these. And all of these, Bell's Beach had that massive, all these giant bands. And so what other sport? You don't go to a tennis contest in Roland Garros, and then after the tennis matches, they put on the lights and and they call some rock and roll heavy, and the tennis guys are invited. They have VIP passes. So all of this is like really close. And so you have to you have to have your head screwed on pretty well to obviously be able to enjoy life, but not get lost in it. And Hawaii is full of these cases, Australia, this thing of Shane Herring's passing. And it's like tragic stories of like people just being well below their talent. And so, I think you have to, big surf helps you be humble. Obviously professional, you have to have a bit of an ego and self-confidence to win contests. And so it's really easy. Surfing doesn't miraculously save us. Just because you're a good surfer doesn't mean that you're miraculously going to be a good person. And so I think that, but just by doing breath work, because I came in here and I got the benefit of listening to João Valent's maybe we're not supposed to do two in a row.
No problem. It's fine. We're assuming that we are on the same clothes.
There we go. So, he was talking about yogis, and you think, oh, yogis. And so in the Brazilian, there are all these comic things that there's a guy at the beach and some other guy goes and he scares him. like, come on, what's up, master? What's up, guru? And he's like, fuck you. Hey, I thought you were a yogi. You never get annoyed, or, you know, you're supposed to be like the guru, the master Zen, you know?
Yeah.
So there's this, I mean, that's us. That's the humor of it. And so, you know, you can't take yourself too seriously, but obviously, you know, to progress within your career, there has to be, you know, and so this balance, because surfing is a balancing act, I think we have so many things to tap into, but it's like world surfing. You got to use the tools. If you don't use them, they don't work by themselves. And so we have to refine our spirit. We have to work on these things. And I mean, you have to tap into all these sayings, and there's so much information on the internet. I mean, you can tap into so many inspirational things. For me personally, the Woody Allen one of like, you know, 99% of success is showing up. You know, like obviously if you're talented, you have a lot of things in your favor. But if you don't show up, if you don't like, you know, do like certain things, it's not going to happen, you know? And I think that learning that and, you know, yeah, I'm, you know, then so many things help, you know. I'm lucky that my parents, you know, it doesn't mean anything, but yes, they're stable, you know, and they always taught me values and that, you know, putting in the effort is worth it. You know, all of these things add. Obviously, it's not like a requirement. I have some amazing friends that had much more troubled parenting and they came out fine, you know. University doesn't solve it. I have friends who never did university and they're super balanced individuals, like, you know, like have tapped in. Again, there's so much information. But you have to want to use it. I really look up to Aprimor, you know, Iago Dora's dad. I mean, I think he's such an amazing contribution to professional surfing because his approach brings results, you know. So I think obviously if it's so zen and then you don't win or you don't, you know, your skill set is not high enough, then it's like, oh, well, it doesn't really work, right? But so I think that approach is really important. And I think we need to nurture people who are in that space and that are able to, yes, you need to find ways to measure that success, you know? But that's where I think like there is a lot of growth within the conservation movement. I mean, Save the Waves is an organization that even within, I think professional surfing should be more connected to it. I mean, I think there's tremendous potential between a partnership between the World Surf League and an organization like Save the Waves, because each iconic place could be a World Surfing Reserve, and there's so much potential. These are discussions that sometimes, then it's like negotiations, you know, but I think that's where a lot of growth in the global surf industry lies.
Whoa.
A lot of really good points there. Processing it all.
Yeah. Totally. What about the Azores project? What happened to that?
Well, I mean, you know, it's this thing. I mean, Nick took all of he's a communication guru, and I didn't really tap into that well enough. And he's teaching me now. And João, you got to post more regularly. Like, seriously? You know? Yeah. But there was a little moment that we weren't able to push that communication side of the project. And I mean, it was 9 years of explorations, and we ended up doing a little bit too many things. And so we had the awards, so the like Big Wave Surfing, Portuguese Surfing Awards, which was amazing. Miguel, you were part of that. And that kept us going, you know, because we connected with surf journalism and all of that. And it was just something that we weren't able to give our sponsor enough, like, of mainstream media and stuff like that. And maybe we're spread a little bit too thin. You know, at the time, I wasn't able to move to the Azores. Maybe that would have been, you know, because we had that breakthrough at Viola with that giant barrel. But you need to back it up and need to find, and there's so many waves. I mean, I can say this openly because there are all these outer reefs, and it's just like, I mean, it's wonderful for exploration. Nick's kind of studying it with his new Mountains of the Sea project. Maybe there might be some new expeditions.
You are also part of that.
Yeah, helping, you know, again, I mean, you have to be really obsessed with your physical preparation. I mean, to surf giant waves, it's not like you cannot, I don't want to, I mean, you know, to expose myself like too much and be like, because once you're in the water, like you can't like, go
Not go.
half-ass, you know,
Yeah.
like it doesn't happen that way.
Just come at you.
And so you want to pull in, you want to do something. And if you don't, normally that's when injuries happen, if you're like second guessing things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, certain ways, maybe I can be in the water. Obviously I'm not like over it. And it's important to think about this, but maybe, not in the front lines of like how Nick will want to like have pushing himself out there and all that. But yeah, so the EDP Mar Sem Fim project was, it was wonderful. And we started a lot of things, and it is difficult because we weren't able to kind of continue. I think the awards still have tremendous potential.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's interesting. Nick is picking up on some of these things because he studied it and he's kind of seeing the potential, and maybe he can kind of solve a little bit of the equation of like, having a little bit more communication around it, and just kind of like picking off where it kind of stopped. It was, yeah, but that's, we inherited, so Hope Zones actually inherited the hangar that we had for the Portuguese big wave surfers in Nazaré. So we have a space that now has this kind of sustainability, but also guys like Eric Ribier, which is one of our ambassadors, and Miguel Blanco. So they have a spot. So the top Portuguese big wave surfers, Nick has his own thing, and a lot of the other guys have their own. But if you're kind of like just starting, you have a place where you can kind of get started and get going. And so, there's still some things that are part of that infrastructure that we kind of built. And EDP is really passionate about surfing. It got into the Surf for Tomorrow project, which is an amazing project, with professional surfing, the contest here in Irisaira.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really cool that we were part of that history. And I think one of the things I was told about is that this whole connection, because renewables is such a big message for EDP, that the whole thing of the jet ski and the fuel, it was just really difficult for this to match the narrative. So big wave surfing and towing was such a thing of the proximity to Nazaré. It was clashing more and more.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of talks that EDP could have even been like the title sponsor for the contest. And it could have been like, with the reach that the WSL has, it could have been like Nazaré could have been very closely connected to EDP, but there wasn't this connection to renewables, and it was towing. And so I think that kind of like severed, and we were growing, and it's just, this is getting too close to things that are clashing to our values. And so maybe we should just focus more on like shortboarding and that. And it's just more, it doesn't have this whole mechanized element that's connected to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Well, that's all I have for you.
I just have one more question. One more
Okay,
question. One more question.
Go ahead.
Do you still drive that old Volkswagen Golf?
No.
It died
I wish I
finally.
did. It finally died. I love that car.
was a
Thanks for
classic.
remembering it.
It was a classic.
The Golf.
The old Golf.
Yeah.
Gray Golf.
And I have a friend who is like an amazing cartoonist. So a big shout out to Flip Andrade because he's this Marvel cartoonist, and we're working on this long-term project. So this is called Blue Minds. We've been working on, maybe it will never come out, but there was one cartoon that he actually did of some other story, and there was the exact same Golf. So thank you so much for remembering that. Thanks, boys.
Thank you, João, for coming.
Cool. See you next time.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Oh yeah, that too.
Cool. That was really awesome, guys.
Sweet.
Nice.